God's favor is coming so strong and it'll make you unrecognizable. Not because you've changed who you are, but because He's about to reveal who you always were. The world saw the struggle, the shame, the storms you survived. They identified you by your wounds, by your silence, by what you lacked. But when God places His favor upon you, everything attached to you must shift. Your presence, your influence, your capacity, your voice, your value. This is not about superficial blessings. This is divine validation. God is about to robe you in something so profound, it will confuse those who once underestimated you and silence those who tried to define you by your past. Upon a person, it confuses the logical, offends the jealous, and activates the unstoppable. People will ask, how did they rise so fast? Where did this come from? But what they don't know is that you didn't skip the process. You just didn't quit in it. You stayed hidden, faithful, misunderstood, and refined in silence. But now the one who formed you in obscurity is about to announce you in visibility. And when He does, it won't be a small introduction. It will be a divine reintroduction. You will not look like the battles you've survived. You will not resemble the tears you've cried. Favor will rest on you like a mantle, and those who once ignored your presence will not be able to overlook your impact. You will enter rooms you didn't campaign for, sit at tables you weren't invited to, and carry influence you didn't chase. That's what favor does. It rewrites your reputation without consulting your critics. It will place you in positions where your name is mentioned by people you've never met because God is speaking on your behalf in rooms you've never walked into. You are not next, you are now. You are not almost, you are already appointed. And when favor identifies you, nothing can unmark you. There is a difference between being known by man and being revealed by God. When He reveals you, He does not just elevate you, He transforms how the world sees you. What they once called broken, He now calls chosen. What they once labeled weak, He now clothes in wisdom. You are not who they remember, you are who God has refined, and no one will be able to reconcile the old version of you with the new manifestation of His glory on your life. This kind of favor doesn't beg for recognition. It attracts honor. It speaks louder than explanations. It silences gossip without you opening your mouth. It makes people question their perception of you because now they must reconcile with the truth that what they counted out, God was just counting up. That what they dismissed as ordinary, heaven had already marked as extraordinary. The ones who mocked your pace will be shocked by your rise. Because God's favor does not move according to man's clock. It moves by divine intention. And when He says it's your time, there is no force, no system, no enemy that can delay it. You are stepping into a realm where your very presence becomes a testimony, where people will say something is different about them, and they'll be right. It's the favor. It's the evidence of unseen oil. It's the residue of divine process. And it's making you unrecognizable, not in ego, but in essence. What is coming upon you is not random. It's not accidental. It's not luck. It is the signature of a God who rewards the unseen obedience, the silent sacrifice, the private endurance. God saw it all, the lonely nights, the silent rejections, the prayers nobody heard. And now He is answering not just with a blessing, but with a transformation. Favor is about to make you look like the future, not the fight. You will not have to explain your journey. Your results will speak, your peace will radiate, your glow will testify. And some people will try to reconnect, not because they see you, but because they see what's on you. But you'll know, this didn't come from man. It came from the one who sits high and looks low, the one who anoints in silence and announces in power. You didn't hustle for this. You were prepared for this. And now the God of divine reversals, of sudden turns, of supernatural breakthroughs, He's about to dress you in favor so heavy your past won't recognize you. Your enemies won't recognize you. Even you, when you look back, won't recognize who you were before His hand came upon you. So don't shrink, don't explain, don't apologize, walk in it, wear it, own it, because God's favor is coming so strong, it's about to make you unrecognizable. They thought they knew who you were because they saw your wounds. They measured your worth by the visible evidence of your pain. They named you after your storms, your silence, your scars, and your seasons of loss. But what they saw was only a chapter, not the manuscript. What they judged was only the shell, not the spirit. They didn't realize God had hidden your true identity underneath layers of endurance. He covered your potential in humility, cloaked your calling in quiet places, and allowed the world to see the bruises while He nurtured the brilliance that would one day emerge. That brilliance is about to be revealed, not through effort or exposure, but through a divine favor so transformative, it will unveil the version of you that even you forgot existed. This favor is not decoration, it's revelation. It doesn't arrive to embellish who you were. It comes to announce who you've always been. The you that stayed faithful when doors closed. The you that prayed when no one understood your pain. The you that didn't retaliate, didn't collapse, didn't compromise. God saw that version. He honored that version. And now He is about to introduce you to the world not as the person who suffered, but as the person He sculpted in the midst of suffering. The favor that's coming isn't coming to flatter you, it's coming to identify you. God's favor has a way of making what was hidden become undeniable. It's not about reinvention, it's about recognition. There is a side of you that's been covered in ashes, waiting for the wind of heaven to blow. And that wind is moving now. The same people who associated you with defeat will be forced to reconcile with your distinction. They will try to connect your current glow to your past grind, and it won't make sense, because this is not the product of human transformation. This is divine unveiling. Favor is God's fingerprint saying, "This one is mine." And when God puts His hand on a life, He doesn't just fix what was broken, He reveals what was buried. It's important to know that your identity was never tied to what happened to you. The betrayal, the abandonment, the delay, none of it defined you. It refined you. It purified you. It tested your depth, but it never had the authority to name you. Only God names His children. And when He names you, He doesn't consult your history. He speaks from eternity. That means who you're becoming is not a surprise to heaven. It's a reflection of a divine design that's always been active, even in your lowest moments. You were not overlooked. You were reserved. You were not disqualified. You were disguised. And now that disguise is being lifted by the weight of His favor. People assumed you were weak because you were quiet. They thought you had no power because you never pushed back. But silence is not surrender. Sometimes it's strategy. And now the God who allowed you to be underestimated is going to use that same underestimation to become the platform of your unveiling. When favor begins to rest on your life, it doesn't ask permission to shift perceptions. It simply arrives. And when it does, it carries the authority to silence every label that ever misnamed you. You are not the failure they talked about. You are not the mistake they whispered about. You are not the mess they expected to stay stuck. You are the one God has chosen to display the kind of transformation that cannot be denied. The one who was crushed but not broken, buried but not forgotten, tested but not defeated. And now, in the full timing of God, favor is lifting the veil. It is restoring your name. It is changing your appearance, not physically, but spiritually. So much so that even familiar faces will stare in disbelief. This favor will speak louder than your explanations. You won't need to defend who you are or justify how you arrived where you are. The fruit will speak, the oil will speak, the undeniable excellence on your life will speak. And those who only knew the former, you will have to adjust their language because the person standing in front of them won't match the memories they held in their mind. You have outgrown the old definitions, and now you are walking in the fullness of what God always knew was inside of you. No one can deny what God does when He decides to reveal the hidden treasure within a life. You've been buried, yes, but you were buried like a seed, not like a corpse. And now you are breaking through the soil, not by force, but by favor. You are emerging as the product of divine preservation. Everything you went through was preparation for this kind of unveiling. Your voice will carry a weight it never carried before. Your presence will shift atmospheres. Your countenance will carry a peace that contradicts your past. That is what favor does. It rewrites how people perceive you, not by changing your story, but by completing it. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth anymore. The evidence of God's hand is about to do what your words never could. You are no longer defined by survival. You are marked by glory. And when people ask, is that really them? The answer will be yes, but not the version they remember. The version God always intended, the one that waited, that worshipped, that withstood. You are not unrecognizable because you've become someone else. You are unrecognizable because God has finally made visible the masterpiece He's been forming all along. God never pours out favor for spectacle. He doesn't elevate you to entertain the crowd or to decorate your life with superficial claps and compliments. When His favor rests on a life, it doesn't chase visibility. It fulfills divine responsibility. Favor is never random. It's assigned. It does not arrive to impress people. It arrives to initiate purpose. The spotlight of heaven is not for show, but for strategy. And when God's favor begins to move in your life, it will not magnify ego. It will magnify assignment. You will not rise just to be seen. You will rise because you were meant to serve something greater than yourself. So many people are drawn to favor because they think it's about fame. They think it's about being admired or followed or applauded. But favor doesn't follow the path of popularity. It follows the trail of obedience. It doesn't choose the loudest or the most visible. It chooses the available. The ones who said yes in private. The ones who stayed committed when no one was looking. The ones who carried the burden without a platform and sacrificed without recognition. And when the time comes, God uses favor to highlight those who are ready to carry influence with integrity, not just carry titles for display. This kind of favor is sacred. It's holy. It is not designed to feed your pride, but to unlock the power of your purpose. And that purpose is never about you alone. It's about what God wants to do through you for others. When He favors you, it's because He trusts you. He knows you will not corrupt the blessing. He knows you will not idolize the platform. He knows you won't make the moment about yourself. Favor is heaven's stamp that says, this one is ready. Not ready to be adored, but ready to be assigned. Purpose will always outlive popularity, and that's why divine favor chooses differently. It chooses the overlooked, the rejected, the unlikely. It picks the one who doesn't look qualified because God doesn't check resumes. He checks readiness. He examines the heart, the posture, the character. He sees if you can carry the weight of His will without being crushed by people's opinions. Because when favor starts to elevate you, the noise will rise with it. Opinions will follow. But those who are rooted in purpose won't be moved by praise or shaken by criticism. They don't perform, they serve. When you understand that favor is for function, you no longer need to defend your rise. You won't have to explain why doors are opening, why rooms are making space for your name, or why certain people are drawn to you without knowing your story. It's not your charisma, it's your calling. It's not your charm, it's your capacity to carry kingdom weight. God's favor will place you where others thought you didn't belong, not to boast, but to build. You're not rising for attention. You're rising because there's work to do. Kingdom work, restoration work, healing work, legacy work. And this is why favor doesn't always feel glamorous. because it pulls you into responsibility before it presents you in public. It demands sacrifice before it releases reward. It places a requirement on your life that fame never will, the requirement to carry oil, not just image, to live with conviction, not convenience. God favors those who can be trusted to move when He speaks, even if it costs them comfort. And when that kind of favor lands on your life, it makes you stand out, not for applause, but for impact. Some will misunderstand it. They'll assume you wanted the spotlight, not knowing you only wanted God's will. They'll assume you chased recognition, not realizing you chased God's presence, and recognition chased you. But you don't owe anyone a defense. Favor speaks its own language. It speaks in fruit, in peace, in consistent results that only heaven could have orchestrated. You don't rise to make a name, you rise to fulfill a purpose. And when that's your motive, nothing can block your momentum. Every door that opens, every opportunity that finds you, every moment that shifts in your favor, it's not random, it's not luck, it's a divine orchestration. God positioning you where your voice can carry weight, where your story can birth freedom, where your presence can stir transformation. This is what favor was always meant for, not to make you popular, but to make you powerful in the Spirit. Not to give you status, but to give you access to impact lives, shape destinies, and echo the heart of God in places your past couldn't imagine. You didn't endure what you endured just to be admired. You endured it because God was preparing you to carry something sacred. And now favor is unlocking what was buried, not so you can be seen, but so your assignment can be fulfilled. You're not rising to become someone else. You're rising to finally walk in who you were born to be. And that kind of favor, the kind tied to purpose, it doesn't fade when applause dies down. It only grows stronger because it's rooted in heaven, not hype. So walk boldly, not in the confidence of man, but in the confidence of your calling. Don't shrink to make others comfortable, and don't perform to gain their approval. Favor has already marked you, and purpose is already unfolding. This journey is not about popularity, it's about obedience. And because you remained faithful in hiddenness, now God is about to reveal you, not to impress the world, but to ignite your assignment. There's a moment coming where the ones who thought they had you figured out will fall into confusion. Not because you've pretended, not because you've changed masks, but because God is about to reveal a version of you that was never meant for their understanding. They knew the weary you, the wounded you, the weary smile you used to hide the weight of silent battles. They became familiar with your struggle, comfortable with your limitations, and at peace with a version of you that didn't threaten their comfort. But when God's favor shows up, real favor, sovereign favor, it disrupts every label placed on you. It rewrites the image that people have memorized, and it causes confusion, not because you're pretending, but because they never saw who you really were. Favor reveals the true weight of a life. And the moment it begins to rest on you, the people who once placed you in small categories will feel shaken because the boundaries they built around your life can no longer contain the expansion God is performing in secret. It is uncomfortable for them to watch because it's easier to handle someone when they remain in a version that makes sense. But when God lifts you, when He breathes on you, when He opens doors no man could touch, it confuses every expectation formed in limitation. People get uncomfortable when transformation doesn't ask for their permission. They will question your timing. They will question your arrival. They will even question your worthiness, not because you aren't worthy, but because your growth unsettles their assumptions. Your rise confronts their control. You were once the quiet one, the one they pitied, the one they whispered about in corners as they tried to make sense of your setbacks. Now the very same people are asking, how did this happen? Who opened that door for them? Who gave them access? But what they'll never grasp is that it wasn't man that promoted you. It was God. It wasn't influence that lifted you. It was favor born from obedience, forged in pressure and polished in pain. You are not stepping into something new to prove a point. You are stepping into something eternal to fulfill a calling. But they will still wrestle with a new version of you. Because when people are committed to their limited idea of who you were, your evolution becomes offensive. Not because you are offensive, but because your growth challenges what they thought they knew. And nothing disrupts a comfortable narrative like a person who rises without asking for permission. Nothing rattles assumptions like divine favor that comes from the hand of God, not the hand of man. Some will even try to remind you of the former you, not to help you stay grounded, but to keep you confined. They'll speak of your past to measure your present. They'll bring up where you started to downplay where you're going. But what they don't understand is that God never begins a thing without already knowing how it will end. The version of you they saw struggling in survival mode was still chosen. You were still marked. You were still anointed, even in weakness, even in silence. Favor is not a reward for perfection. It is an invitation into purpose. And now that purpose is emerging with a force that cannot be dismissed. You've walked through seasons where it felt like no one saw you. You gave without recognition, served without spotlight, remained when others walked away. You endured not because you were weak, but because you were planted. And when favor finds the planted, it brings forth fruit so undeniable that even your enemies will be forced to take notice. Not everyone will celebrate, but everyone will witness. Because God will make sure that those who counted you out will have to stand and watch as He calls you forward. The confusion comes not because you've changed, but because you've been revealed. Favor doesn't make you someone new. It makes visible who you already were beneath the pressure, behind the pain, beneath the opinions of people who never saw your worth. God is pulling the curtain back on the authentic you, the one He formed before you were known, the one He refined in fire, the one He sustained in the dark. And now that the appointed time has come, He's bringing clarity to your identity, while others scramble to reconcile the transformation they never expected. Let them be confused. Let them wrestle. You don't owe them an explanation for the divine work God is doing in your life. Favor is not up for debate. It's not subject to the approval of those who once doubted you. It's a mark, a mantle, a movement. And the more they try to figure it out, the more they'll realize this isn't something that can be explained by logic or effort. It's grace, it's oil, it's evidence of divine strategy at work in human form. You didn't force your way here. You were called. And when God calls, no misunderstanding, no mislabeling, no confusion can stop the arrival. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them ask their questions. Because while they're trying to figure out how it happened, you'll be busy walking in what you were born for. Not because you need their recognition, but because heaven already gave you its endorsement. The confusion of man will never cancel the clarity of God. God doesn't operate on human calendars. His favor is not tied to earthly clocks, nor does He move according to the schedules people try to place on your life. People may have given up on you because time passed and nothing looked like it was shifting. They may have assumed your silence meant stagnation and your waiting meant you had been forgotten. But what they didn't realize is that you were not late, you were hidden. And when God hides someone, it is not to abandon them, but to prepare them. Heaven is never rushed by earthly opinions. The timing of God is sovereign, strategic, and sacred. It doesn't bend to pressure, and it never needs permission to begin. You weren't forgotten. You were being fortified. And now that the appointed moment is approaching, everything that was once delayed is being released. Not because someone finally opened a door for you, but because the God who authored your purpose has decided to announce it. His favor is about to interrupt the rhythm of your life in a way that defies all logic. It won't align with man-made expectations. It will feel sudden to everyone watching, but to God it was always scheduled. While others were watching the clock, God was watching your heart, waiting for the moment it would be strong enough, still enough, and surrendered enough to carry the weight of what He's about to release. Human validation is often impatient, People are quick to crown someone who fits their mold, who checks their boxes, who climbs according to their system. But divine favor doesn't wait in line. It doesn't need approval from a boardroom or endorsement from a circle. When God chooses to move in your life, He moves without hesitation and without apology. He doesn't ask anyone for permission to bless you. He doesn't consult your past before He releases your next. And when He says it's your time, no human timeline can override His word. That's the beauty of divine timing. It comes dressed in the unexpected. It arrives after they said it was too late. It shows up when others have already left the room. It finds you in the wilderness and calls you into the spotlight without a vote. People may ask, where did this come from? How did this happen so fast? But they didn't see the years behind the curtain. They didn't hear the midnight prayers, feel the lonely decisions, or witness the quiet growth. God was working beneath the surface, shaping your character in silence, anchoring your identity in truth. And now His favor is about to be made visible in your life, not because you pushed for it, but because you were positioned for it. Let them say it happened too quickly. Let them call it sudden. What they see as a surprise is simply the unveiling of God's order. He was never behind schedule. He was simply waiting for the moment that aligned with His eternal will. You see, what looks like delay is often divine design. God doesn't rush masterpieces. He doesn't expedite destiny to satisfy impatient eyes. He matures the soul before He magnifies the platform. And when that process is complete, favor follows, not as a reward for performance, but as a revelation of preparation. People may have given up on you because your timeline didn't match theirs. They thought if it hasn't happened by now, it won't. They walked away because your growth wasn't loud enough for their attention. But God doesn't bloom flowers to impress crowds. He brings beauty out of the soil when it's time. And when favor arrives, it makes up for lost time. It restores what was overlooked. It accelerates what was once delayed. It compensates for every door that was shut, every season that felt wasted, and every prayer that seemed ignored. God's favor is about to make it clear that you are not waiting in vain. You are being refined. He was breaking the need for approval, cutting away the fear of rejection, and anchoring you in a confidence that doesn't need applause. So when He lifts you, when He opens that next level, you won't rise to prove yourself. You'll rise to serve. You'll move with clarity, not confusion. You'll walk in boldness, not arrogance, because you'll know this was never about being on time by man's standards. This was about being ready in God's eyes. There's something unstoppable about a person who waited for God's yes. They don't rush, they don't panic, they don't strive to be noticed. They simply align with heaven. And when that alignment is in place, favor flows effortlessly. Things that took others years to grasp will come to you with ease, not because you're better, but because you're appointed. You don't have to manipulate anything to make it happen. You don't have to compete, compromise, or beg. When God moves, He brings everything you need into the right space, at the right time, with the right strength. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are on divine schedule. And God is about to make up for what looked like lost time. His favor is coming with force, not because you forced it, but because you faithfully endured the process. And when it falls, it will silence every doubt, cancel every lie, and overshadow every delay. Because when God says now, nothing can hold back what He has already declared over your life. There is a moment when God no longer allows you to be seen through the eyes of your former battles. A divine moment when heaven itself steps in and says, enough, now they will see who you truly are. You've carried the weight of old labels, survived seasons where people identified you by your struggle, your silence, your survival. But what they didn't understand was that you were never meant to stay there. You were passing through, not settling. They looked at the ashes and assumed that was the end, never realizing God had already written the next chapter long before the pain began. And now His favor is about to reintroduce you, not as who you were, but as who you've become. There's something powerful about divine reintroduction. It's not a performance. It's not a reinvention of image. It's a resurrection of identity. The unveiling of what's been refined in the fire, the revealing of the purpose that was covered in pain, the exposure of greatness that was once overlooked. You're not becoming someone new. You're stepping into who you were created to be all along. The version of you that fear couldn't destroy. The version of you that disappointment tried to bury. The version of you that heaven has been guarding, shaping, and preparing behind the scenes while the world was writing you off. You see, God's favor doesn't just elevate, it corrects. It makes visible what was misjudged. It separates truth from assumption. It silences the chatter of those who misunderstood you and magnifies the evidence of who you truly are. This is not about revenge, and it's not about proving them wrong. This is about purpose standing tall in its rightful place. You won't have to announce it. You won't have to defend it. When God reintroduces you, even your silence will speak. The way you walk, the way you show up, the way you carry peace in rooms that once broke you, that will be the evidence of the transformation favor has birthed in your life. There will be people who stare, caught off guard by your shift. Some will be silent, not knowing what to say because the narrative they once clung to no longer fits. Others will try to remind you of who you used to be, not to ground you, but to limit you. But you don't have to answer to the old version anymore. That version served its purpose. That version endured, prayed, fought, grew. And now it's time for the emergence of what was buried in the soil of your obedience. This is the divine unveiling, not manufactured, not forced, not performed, authentic, holy, powerful. And yes, it will confuse some because they saw your struggle, but never saw your surrender. They saw your low point, but never saw your intimacy with God in the quiet. They saw the pressure, but never discerned the purpose. They spoke over your pain, never knowing that pain was giving birth to the very strength that's now lifting you. You are being reintroduced, not by people, but by God Himself. And when He does it in a way that no one can deny. You will not be able to blend into the background anymore. You will not be able to shrink to keep others comfortable. Favor has a fragrance that cannot be hidden. When it's on you, it draws attention not to your image, but to your impact. This shift is not cosmetic, it's spiritual. It's not about being seen for your outer appearance. It's about being recognized for your inner calling. The world saw the shell, but now God is allowing them to see the oil, the anointing, the grace that sustained you when others would have collapsed. You're not just walking into rooms, you're being sent. You're not just gaining influence, you're being trusted with it. Your name is being whispered in spaces your feet haven't touched yet. Not because of ambition, but because of alignment. You've been aligned with heaven's agenda, and now the heavens are responding. Let them wonder. Let them ask how this happened. Let them wrestle with the sudden weight your presence carries. You don't owe them a version of yourself that fits their memory. God has called you higher. He has wrapped you in favor, not as decoration, but as confirmation. Confirmation that He saw every sacrifice. Confirmation that He never forgot the vow you made in the dark. Confirmation that what was hidden has now been authorized to shine. You are no longer defined by what broke you. You are marked by what built you. The strength, the grace, the wisdom. It didn't come from comfort, it came from the crushing. And now that oil is speaking louder than any story they used to tell about you. You are not who they remember. You are who God has refined. And this is your reintroduction, not to prove your worth, but to walk in it. Not to be accepted, but to take your place. Not to be noticed, but to be used. Let this be the season where you stop shrinking, where you stop apologizing for surviving, where you stop explaining how favor found you. You've already paid the price in tears, in time, in trust. Now walk boldly into the reintroduction God has orchestrated. Walk with grace, but walk with power. Because when God reintroduces someone, He doesn't consult the past, He reveals the promise. The world rarely notices what it cannot measure. People are quick to celebrate visible victories, but slow to honor silent endurance. They applaud the outcomes, but they overlook the process. They are drawn to platforms, but blind to preparation. What they don't realize is that everything divine is first formed in the unseen. And while the world wasn't clapping for you, while no stage called your name and no spotlight followed your footsteps, God was watching. He saw the tears behind closed doors. He heard the whispered prayers no one else would ever know. He noticed the sacrifice, the self-denial, the moments you wanted to give up but didn't. And now that silent endurance is about to be met with public favor, the kind that no one saw coming but heaven always intended. You see, favor doesn't chase noise, it responds to depth. And depth is forged in silence. It's developed in seasons where your obedience is not seen, your faithfulness is not rewarded, and your loyalty to God is tested with delay after delay. You showed up anyway. You served without recognition. You gave even when you lacked. And God took note. That is the currency heaven responds to. Not performance, not popularity, but private perseverance. There is nothing more powerful than a soul that chose to keep going when quitting would have been justified. That choice has been speaking louder than any words you could have ever said. It reached heaven before it ever reached people. People didn't see what it cost you to be consistent. They don't know the weight you carried while still managing to smile. They can't measure how much you forgave, how often you humbled yourself, how many times you chose peace over proving a point. But God knows. God counts every tear, weighs every decision, and values every sacrifice that was made in secret. And now, in the full counsel of time, He is preparing to honor all that was done in obscurity. The world saw the silence, but God saw the substance, the kind of substance that can carry the weight of divine favor without breaking under the pressure of it. There is something beautiful about being refined in private. You weren't performing for anyone. You weren't chasing validation. You were walking with God. Even when the path felt invisible, you were being shaped, stretched, and strengthened when no one was applauding. And now what was growing in the dark is about to blossom in the light. But make no mistake, this is not sudden. It may appear overnight to others, but to you, it's been years in the making. Years of discipline, years of dying to your own will, years of trusting a promise that had no visible proof. That's the kind of soil favor grows in, the kind of soil where only the Spirit could sustain you. What they will soon call success, God calls survival. They will see the shine, but they won't know it was produced by the pressing. They will see the oil, but not the crushing that came before it. But none of that matters now, because favor doesn't need applause to be authentic. It carries its own weight. And when it begins to rest on you, it doesn't just elevate you, it announces the evidence of a life that was obedient when no one was watching. That's why you don't have to explain what's about to happen. You don't need to justify why doors are opening or why influence is growing. You don't need to apologize for the favor that is beginning to clothe your life. It's not arrogance. It's not entitlement. It's the result of unseen obedience. You've been faithful over little. Now God is trusting you with more. Not because you demanded it, but because you demonstrated the kind of character that can carry more without collapsing, the kind of humility that won't misuse visibility, the kind of integrity that doesn't shift with circumstance. What comes next will not just be elevation, it will be vindication, a holy confirmation that God truly honors what man ignores, that He remembers what others forget, that He exalts the ones who never chased thrones, but chased Him. The ones who loved when it was hard, gave when it hurt, and stood firm when it made no sense. You've been that person, not perfectly, but purely. You didn't fake your process. You faced it with grace. And now favor is being released, not as a decoration, but as a declaration. God is declaring through your life that nothing done in secret is ever wasted. That hidden faithfulness is still the foundation of heavenly reward. You were never overlooked. You were observed. You were never forgotten. You are being fortified. And now, as the world begins to take notice, let your story remind others that unseen endurance is still one of the most powerful forces in the kingdom. That those who wait on the Lord are never waiting in vain. That obedience in obscurity is never a waste of time. It is an investment in purpose. And now that purpose is breaking through the surface, watered by years of silent yeses. So let favor find you now, not because you need to be seen, but because it's time. Time for what was once hidden to be honored. Time for what was once planted to be harvested. Time for what was once endured to be crowned. Because when heaven remembers, it rewards. And you who remained faithful in the silence are about to walk in a favor that speaks louder than anything you ever had to say. There will come a time when your voice will no longer need to explain, your presence will no longer need to be defended, and your journey will no longer require justification. That time is drawing near, and it's being ushered in by divine favor. The kind of favor that carries a presence so weighty, it speaks before you utter a word. The kind that silences every rumor, every false perception, every misjudgment, simply by the evidence of what God has done in your life. You won't have to open your mouth to clear your name. The fruit will speak. The results will whisper what your words never needed to scream. When God marks a person with his favor, it becomes the loudest voice in the room. You've spent seasons misunderstood, labeled by opinions instead of truth, measured by fragments instead of the fullness of your story. You were observed through the lens of limited perception, and people spoke on your process without having access to the purpose. But what they didn't realize is that God was never building you to be understood. He was building you to be revealed. And when that revelation begins to unfold, when his favor begins to speak louder than the assumptions, it will hush every narrative that wasn't rooted in truth. You won't have to defend the oil on your life. You won't have to prove what you carry. Favor will declare it on your behalf. There is a peace that comes when you stop trying to explain what only God can validate. People love to define others by visible moments, but they forget that God sees the hidden moments, the ones behind closed doors, the ones soaked in prayer and perseverance. They can speculate, but they cannot undo what heaven has ordained. And when favor begins to move in your direction, it doesn't just elevate, it vindicates, not by force, not through argument, but through undeniable transformation. The kind that causes people to question their own words, the kind that makes silence feel louder than a speech. You were never meant to waste your energy proving your worth to those who were never assigned to see it. That's why God is shifting the way he speaks through your life. He's removing the need for you to convince and replacing it with clarity so strong it can't be argued with. What used to be overlooked will now become undeniable. The doors that were once closed because people didn't see it will now swing open because God has chosen to reveal it, not to impress them, but to fulfill his will through you. The season of having to explain your process is ending. The season of justification is over. You are entering a space where your life will answer the questions your words never could. That's what favor does. It confirms what your spirit already knew, that you were chosen even when you were dismissed, that you were qualified even when you were questioned, that you were called even when others tried to silence your voice. And now, without apology, that calling is becoming visible, not as a performance, but as a living witness. People will see the doors opening, the influence growing, the impact unfolding, and they'll wonder how. Some will ask out loud. Others will stay silent but carry the question in their spirit. But the answer won't come through explanation. It will come through observation, because what's on your life will be too heavy to deny. The weight of your story, the power of your endurance, the strength of your consistency, it will all speak in volumes that require no microphone. Favor speaks its own language, and when it does, it silences everything else. Don't be surprised when those who doubted you begin to observe you with new eyes. Don't be shaken when those who once dismissed your presence now can't ignore your influence. This isn't about pride. It's about purpose being manifested. It's about the fulfillment of what God whispered to you when no one else was around to listen. This is not the season for talking, it's the season for showing. And the showing isn't flashy or arrogant. It's holy. It's dignified. It's refined by fire, and it carries the scent of heaven. Even your stillness will speak. Even your silence will carry substance. Because when God favors someone, everything attached to them begins to echo that favor. The way you walk, the way you serve, the way you carry wisdom, it all becomes part of the message. A message that cannot be distorted, cannot be diluted, and cannot be denied. It tells the truth about you without you ever having to defend yourself. It erases every lie that was told about you with undeniable grace. What God is doing in your life will not need marketing. It will not need permission. It will not need explanation. It will simply move, and as it moves, it will establish a sound that can't be silenced, a sound of redemption, a sound of answered prayers, a sound of restoration. And when that sound is released through the favor on your life, the ones who misunderstood you will finally understand that it was never about proving anything to them. It was always about fulfilling everything He placed in you. So walk with peace. Walk with stillness. Walk with confidence that needs no confirmation. You are stepping into a season where favor will speak for you. And when it does, let it speak loudly. Let it speak truth. Let it speak heaven's yes over every human no. Let it remind the world and even yourself that God's validation is louder than every voice that ever questioned your value. There are certain moves of God that don't ask for permission. They don't knock politely or wait for the approval of people who once overlooked you. They don't require a vote, a panel, or a resume. They come suddenly, fiercely, and completely drenched in divine authority. When God's favor decides to reposition you, it does not negotiate with the systems that tried to suppress you. It doesn't seek agreement from the ones who wrote you off or fit itself into the comfort zones of the past. God's favor moves with sovereignty. It shifts with finality. And when it decides to rest on you, every barrier becomes irrelevant and every limitation is shattered. This is not the kind of favor that shows up to make you popular. It shows up to make you purposeful. It is not the kind that waits for you to be qualified in human eyes. It shows up to reveal that God already chose you, even while others were still doubting your existence. This kind of favor doesn't need a platform to announce its arrival. It doesn't wait for applause or recognition. It arrives in silence and speaks in results. One moment you're in the background, unnoticed and misjudged. And the next, God has placed you at the front with a weight on your life that cannot be explained, only witnessed. You may not have had the connections, you may not have had the support, you may not have had the applause, but what you had was God's endorsement, and that is enough. That is always enough. When God decides to shift you, He does not consult your critics. He does not call a meeting with your doubters. He does not revisit your failures. He simply says, now. And when heaven says now, everything else must move. Favor will reposition you in such a way that people will not only be surprised, they'll be forced to admit they never saw it coming. Not because you were trying to prove them wrong, but because God was proving His word right. There are systems built to delay people like you, designed to keep you in cycles, crafted to make you question your identity. And for a long time, you might have felt like you were stuck in a place where your gifts were too big, your insight too sharp, your spirit too deep. And yet none of it was being used. It wasn't because you were overlooked by accident. It was divine strategy. God was keeping you hidden until the time was right, until the foundation was strong enough, until the fruit was undeniable, until your dependence was rooted in Him, not validation. Because what He's about to do will not be sustained by popularity. It will be sustained by purpose. And now the season has shifted. Now the favor that was forming in silence is beginning to speak. And it will not be polite. It will not ask for room. It will take room. It will not wait for the right people to acknowledge it. It will move in such clarity that the acknowledgement becomes irrelevant. Because when heaven has made a decision about you, no earthly voice can veto it. No protocol can prevent it. No title can override it. You don't need to be invited into rooms anymore. God will send a wind so strong that the rooms open on their own. What this favor is doing is divine repositioning. It is taking the broken parts of your story and placing them into a narrative so powerful, people won't understand how it was you all along. But it was. You were the one in the pit. You were the one who was misunderstood. You were the one whose name was forgotten in rooms where it should have been honored. But now you are the one God is elevating, not because you played the game right, but because you stayed faithful when it would have been easier to bow out. You endured the pain without becoming bitter. You carried the weight without becoming arrogant. You trusted God without manipulating the outcome. And now, heaven is honoring that posture with a kind of favor that man cannot match. Don't be surprised when you start walking into opportunities that you didn't apply for. Don't be shocked when influence starts to surround you without any announcement. It is not random. It is not luck. It is God, the one who makes crooked places straight, the one who lifts up the humble and brings down the proud, the one who specializes in divine reversals. He is not just elevating you, he is positioning you for impact, for legacy, for destiny. And in that repositioning, every former label, every false identity, every wrong assumption is being erased. This favor is not coming to show off, it's coming to show God. So don't shrink. Don't question whether you're worthy of it. Don't second guess the doors he opens just because people didn't clap when you walked through them. They weren't meant to. You are not being repositioned by people. You are being placed by heaven. Let the placement speak. Let the favor speak. Let your life become the evidence that when God moves, nothing and no one can block it. You don't need permission to rise. You only need the favor of the one who sits above all powers. And that favor is not coming. It's here. It's repositioning you right now, without apology, without delay, without compromise. Walk boldly. You're not stepping into elevation because of who you know, but because of who knows you. And he has already gone before you. Some people were perfectly fine with you as long as you were broken, as long as you were stuck, as long as you were silent about the call on your life. They smiled when you were low. They embraced you when your confidence was buried under disappointment, not because they loved you, but because your struggle made them feel secure. They were comfortable with your wounds because your weakness never challenged them. But now God is changing the script. His favor is shifting your posture, elevating your voice, straightening your back, and it is beginning to make some people deeply uncomfortable. They don't know how to handle the healed version of you. They were used to the one who second-guessed themselves, the one who apologized for existing, the one who carried greatness but didn't recognize it yet. But now you're walking in a different confidence, not arrogance, not pride, but assurance rooted in who God says you are. And that transformation is unsettling people who never imagined you would become anything greater than what your trials reduced you to. There are some who built entire narratives around your pain. They whispered your shortcomings like entertainment. They passed your name around like gossip, and they laughed in private when your life looked like it was going nowhere. But favor doesn't need to confront them. It exposes them by simply being undeniable. What they thought was your ending was only your waiting season. What they called failure was just divine development. And now that God is raising you, the same mouths that mocked will have to watch in silence, not because you want revenge, but because the blessing is louder than any rumor. This favor that's falling on your life is not coming quietly. It's the kind that draws attention without asking for it. It's the kind that redefines your image so drastically that even those closest to you will struggle to comprehend the transformation. Not because you're pretending to be someone else, but because the real you is finally emerging, the one that was buried under insecurity, doubt, and delay, the one God always saw, even when life tried to smother it. And as you rise, you will notice the silence of some voices. People who once had much to say suddenly grow quiet when your life begins to speak for itself. Don't be confused by their distance. Some are not angry at you. They're intimidated by the version of you they never saw coming. Their comfort was in your brokenness. Their connection was rooted in your need. But now that you no longer require their permission or approval, they are faced with a version of you that no longer fits into the box they created for you. God's favor has a way of exposing intentions. It's not just about lifting you, it reveals the truth about who really valued you versus who only tolerated you when you were beneath them. Some connections are falling away, not because something is wrong, but because your growth can no longer breathe in environments that expect you to stay small. This is not rejection. This is divine preservation. God is protecting the oil on your life from hands that only wanted to contain it. There's something sacred about being underestimated. It gives God room to perform a miracle so overwhelming, people can't give credit to anything or anyone but Him. And when your transformation begins to manifest, when the favor of God becomes visible, those who used to walk past you without notice will begin to ask, what happened to them? They won't recognize you, not because you've become a stranger, but because they never truly saw you in the first place. They saw your condition, not your calling. They saw your struggle, not your strength. They saw your delay, not your destiny. Now God is making all things clear. His favor is rewriting your name in places where it was once erased. It's restoring dignity where you were once mocked. It's bringing clarity to confusion, honor to shame, elevation to every valley experience you thought would bury you. And no one, absolutely no one, can take credit for it. This kind of rise is not man-made. It is born of fire, refined in silence, and released by the hand of God. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. Let them wrestle with the fact that the person they underestimated has become a carrier of uncommon favor. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to defend your rise. You just have to keep walking in it. Keep standing in grace. Keep showing up as the healed, whole, and chosen version of yourself. Because what's happening now isn't about proving anything. It's about fulfilling everything. Everything God whispered in your spirit when no one else believed in you. Everything He promised when all you had was faith and fatigue. Everything He prepared you for when you were walking through valleys no one else saw. This is not a random shift. This is divine prophecy unfolding, and it will make you unrecognizable. Not because you've changed who you are, but because you've finally stepped into who you've always been. There comes a moment when your life no longer needs an introduction, when your very existence, your countenance, your peace, your posture becomes the proof. A moment when people don't need to hear your story because they can see what favor has done for you. You become the living evidence of what God can do with someone who didn't quit, didn't fold, didn't lose their faith in the shadows. You become a walking testimony, not just because you survived, but because you carry glory where others expected you to carry guilt. This kind of transformation cannot be orchestrated by man. It doesn't come from networking rooms or connections built on shallow applause. It comes from fire. It comes from nights of silent battles, prayers whispered through tears, and days when the only strength you had left was the strength to breathe. And now, the oil on your life is speaking. It's not loud, but it's undeniable. It's not boastful, but it commands attention. God has written His signature on you, and the world is starting to read it. People who once overlooked you will now pause when you enter the room. Not because you seek validation, but because favor changes your atmosphere before you even say a word. The light of God in your life will begin to disturb the darkness in others. Not out of pride, but because true favor carries presence. You don't have to be loud when you're chosen. You don't have to shout to be heard when your life is speaking things the enemy tried to mute. They tried to define you by the chapters they witnessed, but your story was never theirs to edit. God held the pen, and what they called an ending was just an interlude. They saw your struggle but missed your seed. They judged your drought, but never saw your roots. But now the fruit is undeniable. Not fruit from performance, but fruit from obedience. Fruit from trust. Fruit from resilience birthed in silence, when no one clapped, when no one saw, when you chose God over everything. Your peace is louder than revenge. Your strength is more compelling than explanations. Your growth is more powerful than apologies. You're not trying to prove anyone wrong. You're just proving that God was always right about you. The elevation didn't come because you begged for a platform. It came because you became faithful in the shadows, loyal in obscurity, consistent in the dry places. And now heaven has decided it's time for the unveiling. You don't need a title when your life carries oil. You don't need to announce yourself when favor introduces you. And you certainly don't need revenge when restoration speaks louder. This is the season where your actions preach louder than sermons, where your integrity speaks louder than gossip, where your joy silences every accusation that once tried to define you. The people who once pitied you will now have to process how God preserved you. The same people who questioned your silence will now witness your sound. Not the sound of noise, but the sound of purpose, clarity, and grace that can't be explained by natural means. The things that broke you didn't bury you, they built you. The moments that wounded you didn't waste you, they awakened something deeper. And now that depth is producing undeniable favor. You are not just someone with a testimony, you are the testimony. You don't have to revisit every pain to validate your purpose. Your glow now tells the story. Your maturity tells the story. Your self-control, your posture, your peace. They all tell the world that you encountered God and never came back the same. This kind of change is not surface level. It's not about changing your clothes or your circle. It's about transformation from the inside out, the kind that no one can deny because it doesn't wear off. You carry the kind of favor that shifts rooms and disarms judgment, the kind that makes people whisper, "Is that really them?" Not because you're pretending, but because you finally stepped fully into who you were always destined to be. The same people who used to call you ordinary are now seeing what God always knew about you, that you were extraordinary, not because of status, but because of anointing, not because of perfection, but because of purpose. Now, your life is walking in front of you. It's preaching in boardrooms, speaking in family gatherings, and testifying in places where your name was once ridiculed. Your obedience didn't make you famous. It made you undeniable. You carry God's fingerprints on everything you touch now, not because you're flawless, but because you're favored. The miracle is not just in what you've gained, it's in who you've become. The enemy expected you to remain a product of your pain, but you became a vessel of power. You were supposed to collapse under pressure, but you became a carrier of presence. You were supposed to stay quiet, but now your life is speaking volumes, and no one can silence what God has ordained to speak. You are no longer just living, you are representing God's faithfulness, God's mercy, God's timing, and God's ability to lift someone up from obscurity into divine visibility. You're not chasing favor. You've become a resting place for it. You're not asking to be seen. Your light is making it impossible to be ignored. And you're not trying to be great. You're just staying surrendered. And greatness is becoming the byproduct. This is what it looks like when favor becomes your identity, when grace becomes your language, when healing becomes your echo, and when destiny stops being something you talk about and starts being something you live. So now, as you stand in the fullness of who you've become, let the world wonder how you made it. Let them try to figure out how you survived what was meant to destroy you. Let them wrestle with how someone so dismissed, so doubted, so damaged could now carry so much light, peace, and divine strength. But you won't need to explain, you won't need to prove, because when God's favor marks your life, the evidence speaks louder than your voice ever could. You are not who they remember. You are who God rescued. You are not the story they told. You are the testimony God wrote. The version of you that once walked in silence is gone. In its place stands someone who carries weight in the spirit, someone whose very existence confronts doubt, outlives judgment, and overrides every lie that tried to define them. Your glow is not cosmetic, it's consecrated. Your steps are not random, they are ordered. And your peace is not a performance, it's a promise kept by the one who watched you cry in secret and now blesses you in public. This isn't payback. This is purpose unfolding. This isn't revenge. This is revelation that the God who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it. So walk forward boldly, silently if you must, but always full of fire. You don't need the applause. You've got the assignment. You don't need to be recognized. You've already been chosen. And from this moment forward, let your life be the loudest sermon you ever preach. Undeniable favor, unshakable grace, and a transformation so divine, it left you absolutely unrecognizable.